Continuing my theme of ActionScript wizardry, I want to take a moment and talk to you about the modulo operator. The modulo operator calculates the remainder of a division. This can be quite handy, and I'll show you examples in just a moment. First, I want to be sure that we have a good understanding of some basic terminology. Using long division, I'll divide 3 into 7. 2 times 3 is 6, and that leaves a remainder of 1. The divisor is 3, 7 is the dividend, 2 is the quotient, and 1 is the remainder. My division formula looks like this. Dividend divided by the divisor equals quotient. My modulo formula looks like this. Dividend modulo divisor equals remainder. Notice that the modulo operator is represented by the percent sign. Now I'll build an application to demonstrate how the modulo operator works. I'll begin a new ActionScript 3 project which I'll name Modulo. On the stage, I've added 2 input text fields and 2 dynamic text fields. I'll name this input text field txt dividend and this input text field txt divisor. I'll name this dynamic text field txt quotient and this dynamic text field txt remainder. I'll add a green push button to the stage, which I'll name btn green. I'll also add some labels. Then I'll open my Actions panel. I'll import Flash events to enable my application to respond to a button click. I'll create some variables for my calculations. As you may remember, the dividend will be the top number in our division, the divisor will be the bottom number in our division, quotient will be the result of our division operation, and remainder will be the result of the modulo operation. Next, I'll set the default values for my text fields. Now I'll create a function to perform the division. I'll name this function getQuotient. First, I'll set the values for the dividend and the divisor. Then, I'll calculate the value for the quotient. And finally, I'll display the quotient in the txt text field like this. My next function will perform the modulo operation. I'll name this function getRemainder. As before, my first step is to set the values for the dividend and the divisor. This time I'll calculate the value of the remainder using the modulo operator and display the remainder in the txt remainder text field. All that's left to do now is to execute these 2 functions. I'll create a third function to do this. I'll name this function calculate. First, I'll execute the quotient function. Next, I'll execute the remainder function. Finally, I'll add an event listener to execute the calculate function when the user clicks on the green button. Now I'll click Ctrl-Enter to test my movie. I'll click on the green button. As we can see, the quotient of 7 divided by 3 is 2 1/3, and the remainder of 7 modulo 3 is 1. You might want to try this out using different numbers. Now that you understand how the modulo operator works, I'll show you one example of how you might use it. Let's say you wanted your application to react to every third occurrence of an event. I'm going to create an application that will change the text color to red every third time the user clicks on the green button. On my stage, I've added a dynamic text field which I've named txt dividend, a green push button which I've named btn green, and some labels. In my Actions panel, I'll begin by adding an import statement for the Flash events. In my previous example, I spelled out the words for the variables that I used. It would certainly be less cumbersome to use letters instead of words. In this example, I'll use the letters that are typically used to represent these values. The letter A is used to represent the dividend. Here, I've set the default value to 1. N is used to represent the divisor, and here I've set the default value to 3. And R is used to represent the remainder. I'm going to create a function that will change the color of every third item to red. I'll name this function showDividend. First, I'll calculate the remainder using the modulo operator, like this. R equals A modulo N. Since I've set the divisor to 3, the remainder will be 0 each time a multiple of 3 occurs. I'll write a conditional statement to test this. If the evaluation is true, I'll set the text color to red. Otherwise, I'll set the text color to black. I'll display the dividend in the txt dividend text field like this. Then I'll increment the dividend. And finally, I'll add an event listener to execute this function when the user clicks on the green button. Now I'll test the movie. I'll click the button 3 times. And the text color turns red. Then I'll click the button 3 more times. Again, the text color turns red. In my next video, I'll show you how you might use the modulo operator to create an array. To learn more, visit my website at larrystimson.com.